as people are just kind of coming in, just setting a very sort of interesting context, is really this whole sort of an event that has happened, and a lot of the businesses have been forced to really figure out what to do, right? There are technology companies, there are online companies who can actually afford to work from home. I think that's a matter of privilege, and I think there are lots of manufacturing organizations and stuff which cannot. And how do they cope with this? So the idea was really to get people from all kind of backgrounds, people running businesses, people who are in the thick of things and get affected by this, to really stir up a conversation around these issues. And so feel free to kind of have all of these your questions and your queries and your concerns kind of put in. We're obviously not having it where everyone speaks, because then it would become very, very chaotic for us to manage. But feel free to keep the stream going in the chat section. Thanks, Kaushal, for being a part of this. We're just facilitating this. I think the real thing is for all of you to come in and share your thoughts and views. I think we have about 17 people now. Thank you, everybody. There's Arnab, Jacob, Kaushal, Komal, Meghna, Meenal. Hi, Meenal. There's a Moto G. And then we have Nikhil and Rajesh. Yeah. So we'll just kind of keep, but like I said, right, feel free to kind of keep. It would be great if you could just put a note in terms of what are you really expecting out of this conversation. What would really add value to you? If you could put that in the chat section, could be very useful for me to kind of pick it up as we proceed with this conversation. So feel free to just let me know, what are you really expecting out of this conversation? Or is there a specific thing that you're seeking? Then just let me know. Sarah has asked, how has TBI gone about their work for home process? And I will get into that. I will definitely touch on that point. I think it's one of an important things that I wanted to share. How are we doing it and the challenges we're facing, and how are we mitigating them? Feel free to put in your expectations in terms of what you guys want to do. Saurabh says, a good time to actually invest rather than conserve, given that in market conditions like these, you may get cost benefits. Yeah. So yeah, that's one of the things we could talk about. So anything else that you guys would want to know and just feel free to kind of do this. I think it's been 3 minutes past 4. So Kaushal actually says, I'm from the manufacturing sector. He's building products, and he sells domestically in Malaysia as well as exports, and all his new projects are likely to go down, and so are his renovations. So how to counter that? And Nikhil asked, how can we as business owners and entrepreneurs help the entire community survive this phase? Lena asked, what type of new businesses can emerge specific to work from home scenario? I think these are very, very great questions. So let's just get started in terms of what I wanted to talk about. I'm going to share a screen, which is a sort of a deck that I've put in together here. And yeah, so the topic of this conversation is, of course, that this is not business as usual. And how do we basically address all of these issues that we're talking about, right? Are you all able to see my screen? If you could one of you could just say a yes or a, just confirming. Okay, perfect, great, thank you. So I've split this into 3 things, right? So as a business, what are the things that we need to really do in a scenario like this? One is, of course, ideally what we want to do is we want to maximize productivity. And the second thing what we want to do is bring in capital efficiency, which is basically talking about how do we conserve our cash so that we are not hit by rude shocks 6 months down the line. And the third thing I think is very important, and I will go into detail in this, is how do you communicate effectively, and why is this very important? This is really work from home for a lot of the companies who can afford to work from home. We believe it's great. We will save time on commuting. We can sit on our dinner table, which is what I'm doing right now, and take calls. But the reality is very different. Very, very different. We obviously have families. We're bringing work home, which does get into the way of a lot of these things. So how do we deal with this? I think is important. And I think one key thing that I have managed to at least put it out there with our team members is that it's perfectly fine to mingle family and business, because fundamentally even businesses are run by people. it's perfect if you have a kid or a pet walking into your video conference and being a part of it. And I don't think we should shy away from that reality that at the end of it all, even behind a brand or behind a business, it's just people like us, people who have families, people who have a social circle. And I think that's important for us to deal with. So I don't necessarily think it has to be very rigid. And and the moment you kind of break that barrier of formality, I think it becomes a lot easier to manage work with your colleagues and stuff. At any point in time, guys, people who are joining in just now, we are just trying to have a conversation around what to do about businesses in a scenario like this. And we're trying to focus on 3 key things. One of them being, how do you really maximize productivity and then conserve capital, and how do you communicate effectively? So at any point in time, if you have any questions, any points, just feel free to put it out there in the chat section. I will definitely kind of start then going through them as and when we run through this whole presentation. So yeah, so my key point in work from home is really kind of be as social as possible. There really is no line between work and home when you've brought work from home. So coming in, and how are we kind of really set up for productivity when you are working from home, right? To me, I think the biggest learning has been in terms of the tools that enable all of us to go work from home and still remain as productive as we were in office, right? And the 3 key tools that I want to really call out for is Slack. Slack is what we use to keep in touch with our entire team. We're close to about 90 people in the Better India and Carnival, and everybody is on Slack. We have dedicated channels created on Slack for each team. So it's very easy for a team member to just communicate with the entire team. It's very easy to share documents. It's very easy to coordinate. So Slack is something you should get it. It's free, by the way. At least the basic features are free and it's worth it. The second thing that we use is called Basecamp. What happens when you normally, so Basecamp is, by the way, a project management tool, but it really is a lot more than that. Fine. For instance, when you're having a conversation with your colleague and you guys come up with an idea and say, hey, we should totally do this, it kind of gets lost in the realm of other things that you start working on, right? So just get Basecamp. They have a to-do list, put it in there. You can assign a timeline. You can assign it to specific people. You can assign it to yourself, but at least it gets recorded. And the best thing about Basecamp is you could just right click on your own profile and say, hey, what's on my plate? And suddenly it tells you exactly the various set of tasks that are there. So it becomes a lot easier than having to always, reminding a fellow colleague to send you something, or for you to remember to send something and all of that. So everything can be collaborated on Basecamp. They have a free version. But if you really want to go paid, it costs about $90 or $99 a month if you really have a large team. But I think the free version works perfectly fine. The other tool that we use is Zoom, which is what you all are part of, and I guess that's quite ubiquitous now. And most of our meetings now are on Zoom. We also use Google Docs very, very heavily, because Google Docs allows you to collaborate in real time on the same document, right? So my tip would be that if it's possible, create a dedicated workspace. Like in my case, it's our dining table. Setting clear working hours, I think, is important, but I don't think we should fret about it, right? Because there is, like I said, family, there are kids, there's pets. I think we should weave our way through our normal lives and not really get very rigid about working hours. Because you're not, clear working hours work when you're in office, because everything else, every other distraction is kind of removed. But when you're at home, it's not. And I think it's equally important to give recognition to that. Creating a to-do list works beautifully. Like I said, we use Basecamp. You can use any of these other available tools out there. Even a Google Task Manager is very good. Recognizing and communicating with teammates is very, very important. They need to know that you are around for them, and that you're able to and they're able to kind of reach out to you when needed. Fifth is something that I can't emphasize enough. I love long distance running, and I try and do that pretty much at the end of the day with all the work and meetings done. It really helps. I'm not a fitness freak who's advocating people to kind of go exercise every day. That usually doesn't work as an advice. But what I've found is when you're working from home, you really need that extra little effort to put in to just sweat it out, just step out and do that. Snacking is something that I end up kind of doing when you're at home, and that's something that I think needs more discipline than what we thought. So these are just very, very quick tips. Love to kind of have have you guys, add up to this, and for others, I can share it. Kaushal asks, is Trello versus Slack need a better free tool? Well, I think, or they are different and can't compare. Kaushal can't compare. Slack is a communication tool. Slack is like a chat room. Think of it as a WhatsApp for businesses, where you can basically create subgroups for each of your sub teams, and you can share documents and stuff like that. Trello is a very, very well-defined task management software. So you can create a Trello card. They call it a Trello card, and you can insert all your items that you need to get done from a team, and you assign it to the team, and the team gets to work, and then they can just check it off. So it's more of a project management thing. Rajesh says that selecting clear working hours and communicating with others will help in coordination. I think that's a fair point, because the other downside is that when you're working from home is that there is no real sort of a line between work and home. So I think it's important to at least set that up. Kaushal, yeah, so thanks. Okay, so if a simplified PM tool is needed, go for Basecamp. Absolutely. If you need a very simple project management tool, just head to Basecamp. You can set up a task list. You can set up a messaging forum. They have tons of features, and it's a very, very simple product. Sarah asked any recommendations on workout apps. So I run, so I use an app called Strava. I also use the Nike Run Club, which is also a great running app. It can get you started with running with their guided runs. But I've heard that there are many free apps for working out. And for those who are not into working out but really need meditation, I strongly recommend Headspace. Headspace does a great job. So if I were to look at meditation, I know it's ironic that we use an app for meditation with our speakers and headphones and stuff, but that's the world we live in. So we definitely need an app to meditate. And if that is the scenario you're comfortable with, I would recommend Headspace. They have a free version. The reason why I keep emphasizing free version, I think we come from a very frugal startup culture. So, but if you can afford it, go ahead and pay for it. So yeah, and then of course we have a kid at home. Some of our team members have kids too, and pets. And I think what we are learning slowly is that initially we were like, kids should do their studies and stuff. But I think it's kind of realizing that keeping them busy with their favorite games, books, and stuff, I think should be perfectly fine in this sort of time of anxiety. Just moving on. When I come to the second part, right, capital efficiency. So guys who joined in a little late, we very quickly touched upon how do you do productivity? How do you really address productivity concerns when you're working from home? And there were some great tips in the chat section also. The second part, really coming from a business level, I think it's very, very important to be cognizant of how much capital do you have and how much can you afford to take a hit with the businesses going down, right? So capital efficiency to me is something that by the way, I'm learning along all of this stuff. This is something very new for us as well. And I've been doing a lot of reading and putting our thoughts together, and whatever we're learning as we're implementing is what I'm trying to share. Feel free to kind of share your suggestions in the chat section. So here's a sort of an important, very corporate business looking slide. Clearly it's a little more serious than the previous topic. So the first thing I think we need to be very clear about from a finance perspective is how much money is left in the bank, right? How much money for your business is there in the bank, because that really clearly tells you what's your runway like. So what was your total expenses, net expenses minus revenues? What are the last 3 months burn like? And how much is your monthly sort of revenue or an annual revenue rate looking like? I would probably focus only on the monthly revenue right now because of so much uncertainty going forward, right? And I think it's very important to spend a lot of time to understand what is the most obvious place that you can cut your spending, any of the extravagant spending that you have, other than payroll. I think it's an important activity for all of us to do. As business owners, most of the time you kind of tend to have a lot of cost accrued as you kind of keep growing, and then suddenly you don't realize that there's a lot of small things that you end up spending on. And then we look at the team, right? So we touched upon this. How do we ensure everyone is able to work remotely? Like I said, an online first company like ours, we are able to do it. I definitely think it's a matter of privilege for us to be able to do it. Most of the businesses are not. And I would love to hear suggestions from folks here in terms of what other businesses can do in order to ensure that they can work remotely, right? And when you're working remotely, while we touched upon the tools, I think what is also important in terms of you taking a very, very quick, focused call on how much do you need to hire today, like how many people you still need to hire. And there, I think it's very, very important to really sit down and say, who's the next most important hire, right? If you don't need someone critically, then probably don't hire right now. Sure, Komal. Komal unfortunately needs to leave, but yes, we will share the recording. So thank you. We'll send it across. The other part is also that do take a look if there is redundancy in the roles, right? If your business objective starts tweaking, or if your targets kind of start changing, is there any redundancy that you can work on? The second part is, of course, how much are you really spending on marketing and sales? And in that, how much do you think you can cut down without your growth kind of going down very significantly? So I think that's a very important question to ask. I obviously don't have the answers for all of this. I'm just hoping this can be a framework for you guys to start to kind of guide you in terms of how to think. The other part, and I think this is a very important part that you need to do, right, is what are your business threads? What are the businesses that you might have? For instance, you have, let's say you're a manufacturing company and you're supplying to some small businesses in the restaurant business, and you're also supplying small businesses in the FMCG business, right? And so there are 2-3 threads. So I think it's important to identify the threads which have a longer path to profitability, right? And if that's there, then figure out how do you streamline them. I think you should also focus on verticals and just double down on those verticals which you think have higher margins and really just go after them. So for instance, if you're selling to bigger corporations as compared to smaller corporations, if the margins are better, then probably just reorient for the next 3 months, 6 months to generate businesses which have higher margins. And then do this activity, because consumer spending is going to fall down, right, in most businesses. Do forecast, put in an Excel sheet and say, hey, this is what I was thinking I would be doing month on month in terms of revenues. Make all those revenues like half, cut them by half, and see where do you stand. Your fixed costs will always remain, so your variable costs have to kind of cut down. Where all can you do this thing? I think it's a very important thing to do it today rather than 3 months later, assuming that, hey, things will always work out. Because I think even if you do this exercise now, even if things kind of work out better, it's great because you would have brought in efficiency by doing this exercise. So the worst case scenario and that effect on your annual operating plan is a super critical thing to do. So Kaushal, interesting question. Can you please elaborate on the business thread point? Yeah, I didn't get it fully. Perfect. Sure. So Kaushal, like I was saying, there are multiple business threads that you might have. You may not have multiple businesses. You have one business. Let's say you're supplying a set of products to 2-3 different sectors of industry. So for instance, you're supplying to bakeries, you're supplying to restaurants, you're supplying to 5-star hotels, whatever those products might be. And if there are threads which, for instance, yes, customer segments could be one of them, Kaushal. But for instance, if you're supplying to bakeries and you know that, hey, there's a cash flow problem there. It's a very large universe, but my cash comes after every 6 months, as compared to serving, let's say, a restaurant where the cash comes up, the credit period is 3 months, and I kind of get it. And then maybe your path to profitability and cash flow is better there. So it's important to identify which are those customer segments which you want to go slow on and which one you want to go aggressively on, and keeping in mind what your cash flow cycles will be and how quickly you can turn profitable and so on. I hope that kind of answers that question. And then, of course, I wanted to talk about communication. Right? Communication, I think, is very, very underrated when people are running businesses. We don't do enough of this. We believe that it's all about Excel sheets, numbers, growth rate, graphs. And here's what I want to really, really kind of emphasize on. So 2 things you have to communicate with, of course. One is the people who buy from you, which is in a generic sense, customers. I think we have to communicate our message as soon as possible in terms of where you are. Most customers are, everyone right now, the whole planet is kind of enveloped with this whole disaster. So communicating is very, very crucial because people will understand. And communication cannot be behind a brand. It cannot be behind a logo. It has to be very, very human. It has to be a very sort of putting your face out there rather than. So reach out personally, I think, as a founder, as a CEO. This is something that I've been doing actively. And I think it's important because, like I said, right, behind brands and behind businesses, at the end of the day, it's people. It's people like you and me. So when we come across to our customers as a person, as we write to them, as we communicate to them, it makes a huge difference, rather than just, so the next time you're sending out a newsletter, just don't send it out newsletter from no reply at yourbusiness.com, with a brand and signed off by you, but actually send it out personally. Very important to do that. And I think we have to communicate on all channels. In a day of social media, our customers are everywhere. So talking to them everywhere is very, very important. And always share useful, helpful information. Anything that's useful to customers. Don't really get onto this whole sell mode right now. I don't think we should be getting there. I think what we should be really talking about is how, as a brand, as a business, we're trying to make things better. And to your employees and to your team members, I think very important to diffuse the panic, because there's a lot of uncertainty. Being a head of an organization, you obviously have this sort of an advantage that you have a sort of a wider view across businesses, across your business at least. So whereas an employee doesn't have that lens. So it's very important to communicate that overall picture, which helps them be motivated. And if there are any business changes and stuff, I think once you've thought through them, you should definitely be communicating them. And constant touch, like I said, there are enough tools out there on the internet now, Slack being one of them, very easy to remain in touch. And of course, brainstorming as often as possible, right? So this is, I think, crucial for us to kind of get this thing. Imran has asked, did we start a business in food restaurant on this time? Do we start a business in food restaurant on this time while COVID-19 is running? What is your suggestion? I don't think any business should be started in a sector where that requires people to come together. Right? So a restaurant is very much a place where people would be gathering together. So I think this is definitely a very, very wrong time to think about starting a business in the food restaurant. Unless you're looking at a cloud kitchen, which can then, completely deliver stuff online, and you partner with these online food delivery companies, and maybe that's one thing, but I don't think starting a food restaurant would make sense right now. So communication was my sort of a key goal. I think this really helps mitigate a lot of issues. Happy to answer any more questions or anything that people want to, like, if you have questions. If I don't have answers, I'll at least repeat the question. If anyone else has the answer, can actually put in the things. I'll read out two very interesting mails that we got. And Ashok Mithil writes in that while many people have been allowed to work from home, we have overlooked that many maids continue to be asked to come for work. At best, they can be asked to disinfect themselves with sanitizers and wear masks to help the situation, right? So what they're basically doing is that they have several vendors like newspaper walas, milk walas, people who come on a daily basis. And while milk is an essential item, they say we want to shift to milk cartons for a few days and go without newspapers. As I think that's a very interesting point about going without newspapers, going without. I don't know. There's this whole issue about in India we have maids coming home and working, and even for their safety, how do we solve it? I think it's a very, very interesting suggestion. Nikhil asks, okay, this is for all. How many manufacturing owners are there on this conversation? Are there many manufacturing owners here? So Kaushal is a manufacturing owner. So Nikhil asks other manufacturing owners here who can give us some suggestions on how to communicate with our laborers, right? I'm guessing, so that's like literacy levels are not that high. So if you have like blue collar workers, how do we make them understand the seriousness of this phase and its impact on the business? Anybody here who wants to kind of take that thing? In the manufacturing sector, when you have blue collar workers, how do you communicate with them to make them understand that this is very, very serious? They obviously do not have the information access that a lot of us are getting from places like Twitter and stuff, and there's a lot of fake news floating around and stuff. So how do you make them understand the seriousness of this phase and its impact on the business? My sense is, Nikhil, I think it's important to take a call as an employer and say that, we are shutting down, or we are rolling back on a bunch of things, and at the same time giving them the assurance that the jobs are not lost. But I think one level of communication is about talking to, showing them content in their languages. I think the second part is also to take the call and force quarantining and self-quarantining and social distancing. Bhavesh says that they're in the social sector. They had planned many trainings, like water harvesting training in April and May. And they want to know what to do because online doesn't work this at every level, right? They can't obviously teach how to do water harvesting online. Bhavesh, I don't know. Maybe you can. Maybe it can be done. Maybe it can be done by showing tutorials. Obviously, not to the extent that what you can do by being there at the place, but probably it can just work by starting this thing. So I'm saying basically not at 100% efficiency, but even if you're at 80, it's still keeping the ball rolling. Kaushal says that in Malaysia, where he's right now at, the government has made the announcement to shut down. So it's basically cascaded from there for them. I think he's talking from a manufacturing sector perspective. At their end, what they're doing is basically coordinating from an HR point of view and providing proper documentation. They're also negotiating with the government to ensure that pay loss doesn't happen. I think that's interesting. Sarah asked, what about the workshops that are conducted by Carnival and TBI? Yeah, so what we have taken is, we're taking all our workshops online. You have some amazing 6 workshops. If you go to carnival.com, go to our workshop section, you will see 6 online workshops which you can take right now. Anjani asks, better home products are helping me in keeping my surroundings clean. Thank you, Anjani. Krishnan, hi. Krishnan says, we work with few small tailoring units. Right? So this is a very interesting one. So we work with tailoring units, and most of them make cloth bags for events. And now there are no events, so there's no business. And the reality is really tough. I'm not sure if they would need any support other than business. Any thoughts or solutions to share? That's quite dismal to know and learn about. And these small tailoring units are owned by women, and they're making cloth bags for events. What I could think of is if these cloth bags can be kind of repurposed for anything else, like, or sold online in bulk to businesses who want to replace stuff in their offices. So I think the key, Krishnan, would be to identify markets outside the events business. But if anyone else has any answer to that, Kaushal says, can you pass it to supermarkets for carrying stuff meanwhile? That's an interesting one, Krishnan. Maybe talking to supermarkets as people are going and stocking up on a lot of stuff, it could probably open up a new market for you. Lena also says that an answer to issue related to market to make the servants, I feel even though they should be encouraged to stay at home, and this can be a very good opportunity to start a cultural shift where all family members share household chores. I think that's a very, very interesting point, Lena. It's a little complicated though in India because it also generates income. So employing people is also generating income in addition to, of course, having this whole cultural issue and mindset. Yeah, I've been debating on this and reading up a lot of, but it's a lot more nuanced than this. But it's a very interesting point you make. Ankita says communicating with them in the regional languages. Yeah, so Nikhil, I think this goes back to your answer. How do you communicate? I think communicate with regional languages will probably help more. Bhavesh says, thanks. Do throw open at Better India also how people feel in coping up. Bhavesh, I didn't get that. Sarah, something we should do is to ensure that we buy from small businesses and support local vendors. Yeah, can these bags be listed on Carnival? Yes, we can actually. So Krishnan, you should definitely send us an email and see if we can get these bags up on our marketplace. Lena also says that these ladies travel, the maids travel long distances using public transport. So we're definitely making them vulnerable, and I think we should get into this whole social distancing for them as well. Rajesh K says, as a support to the government initiative to keep self safe, some social sector organizations, including us, have opted to work from home and attend to only documentation work as the schools and colleges are closed. Absolutely, Rajesh. I think that's the right thing to do. A lot of people do think that self-quarantining right now is sort of an overreaction. I think it's okay to err on the wrong on that side. if in hindsight it works out, this was an overreaction, it's fine. But if it doesn't, then I think it's important that we did it. That's really my view on this. And considering how the rate of infections have gone up in other countries like Italy and now in Spain and UK, I really think it's not much of an overreaction. We should definitely start self quarantining, more so for our elders, our parents and grandparents. How do we get them to really believe in this, right? And stuff. Yeah. So I don't know. I hope this was kind of useful. If there are any more questions, happy to take. There is one which is from Vikash, who basically says that same, something that we try to touch upon, saying work from home applies to some sectors, but the manufacturing sector, and Vikash has a very different view on this. He says that, can we think about stay at work? Because there are lots of organizations which can't leave their offices or factories and come back because the nature of the business. So what he says, can you figure out, like, you don't quarantine yourself in work at home, but you quarantine yourself at work. And can we organize that? For example, 50% of our fellow manual workers stay at their workplace for 14 days, and then the next 50% shift for the following fortnight. I think this is interesting, maybe for you, Nikhil and Kaushal, who are coming in from the manufacturing sector. This is an interesting point of view. If we can enable their workplaces to have some sort of distancing there and quarantining, of course, keeping in all the amenities and facilities in mind. Might be harder to push, but it's a very interesting concept in flipping the whole idea of work from home. Yeah, you're right. Dependency. Kaushal says there is a dependency on infrastructure, which I totally agree. Samarth, Samarth read that jail inmates are actually helping to meet mask shortage. Is there a way Carnival help them take these masks to market? Yeah, I think we are talking to some of these providers. In fact, we have one NGO which makes masks. I don't know if they do it from jail inmates, but we do have someone as an NGO who makes these masks. Yeah, Kaushal again, back to business. Can I ask this question again, please? Ideas. Kaushal is looking for ideas. He's from the manufacturing sector, building products group. So building products is basically, Kaushal, is it like products for building, like construction, or you're just building generic, like some products? So I didn't get that building products part. Okay. Oh, yeah. So he's actually in the construction space. He's making cement, concrete, and tiles, and he sells domestically in Malaysia as well as exports them. And obviously, new projects are going to come down, and renovations as well. So how do you counter basically the manufacturing sector? Kaushal, I think I don't think there is a foolproof answer. What I think is that a framework needs to be looked at to conserve your business at a low minimum burn, so that once we are out on the other side of this whole calamity, I think it's basically, you should look at when we are on the other side of this whole issue, is it easier for me to get back up from the ground running, right? Because it's going to be extremely hard to find markets in this sector, but is there a way in which you can financially conserve capital, conserve a lot of your clients, and just say that, hey, we're going slow, but we will be back once this is ready, and then basically kind of have it in a sort of a hibernation mode, but keeping the engines humming. That's how I kind of look at it. Though I don't know the dynamics of the manufacturing sector. I don't know if that helps. Should you focus more on domestic or export? I honestly don't know how big the domestic or the export markets is. I'm not an expert there, but I think do take a look at that framework that I shared and see if any of those elements help you get to that. Immaculate Anthony says he revives traditional games. I feel these are very appropriate now for all ages to play. Absolutely. I think there's a lot for people to kind of do during this time. And if you have these traditional games, like, do send us the link, or put it here, and we'll take it up from there. Or if you want, we could have it listed on our platform. OnePlus says we're working with NGOs and SAG who make masks. If you have any leads, please reach us out through Sell With Us. Yeah, absolutely. Actually, if any of you guys are making any products which you think are useful, just go to the Sell With Us section on Carnival, and our team will kind of get onto it. Immaculate, great. So turns out we are already on Carnival, so we will share the link of the traditional games in the video recording that we send out after this. Absolutely. Krishnan, of course, says that the wholesale business by the women who make those masks, which he was talking about, is could be very tough to be replaced by retail. Says I totally agree. Which is why, Krishnan, I think, like someone suggested, I think Kaushal suggested that we should go approach supermarkets and see if that could be some way to do this. Yeah. Meghna has a question. Any ideas on how offline retail businesses or restaurants can survive during this period, especially businesses that can't be replicated well online? Meghna, that's a very important question. And I really wish I had the answer for it. I don't know. So I have a cousin who runs a similar business, and we've been trying to brainstorm in terms of what can you really do while this happens. So, for instance, can the restaurant just become a cloud kitchen and service food online? Because I'm guessing over the next few months, online delivery of food is going to go really, really high. So as a restaurant, probably you can. A retail business also, I'm guessing it would just be prudent to set up something online. Meghna, if online is an issue, I think I read one of the, I was reading a case study of one of the local retailers in a community sort of in the US who just basically circulated his phone number to the entire neighborhood. And when anyone wanted and people didn't want to step out, they had this one person who would just take these calls and then drop the packages outside the door and kind of come back. That seemed to have worked. So that's one way to kind of do it. It obviously won't be at the scale you are at which now, but at least it'll keep the engine kind of going. Nikhil also says if all sectors close for a certain period, then it makes it easier for everyone. If Zomato and Swiggy stop operations for a while, then associate companies and their delivery partners can also stay safe. If Carnival sells products, some unit has to manufacture and deliver them. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think we are in this with our partners. Any of our partners who wants to kind of, not supply, we definitely encourage that. That's fine. We want to make sure that we are here first for our people, be it our customers or employees or partners. The second question is again, Kaushal, become a partner with food delivery service. Yeah, I think Meghna, this is another question. Maybe you can partner with the food delivery service, like a Mumbai Dabbawalas can be a reference he suggests. But I think there are one or two key things where you can, Meghna, you can start to look at how can you service your local neighborhood really well and become like a go-to place for that neighborhood as of now, while all of this is happening. Suraj asks, could you suggest your mantra for mental well-being? Okay, so I don't think my mental well-being is at a high efficiency level. But he's asking this question, the loss of, the context of the financial loss being a peak in all the sector. I think fundamentally I kind of look at it from a very top-down approach, right? I think the biggest thing is that we need to be grateful that we're alive, and we are able to have this conversation. We are able to kind of, watch out for ourselves. So I think that's really the bigger thing that we're grateful about. I think financial losses and stuff are going to be very short-term, and we will be able to recover it as soon as this whole crisis is over. So I'm not too worried about it, but I would definitely worry about making sure that, financially you have enough to just ride through this whole sort of, phase, which could be 3 months or 6 months. We also have a question saying there are so many who survive on daily incomes. With such situation, they shall be totally deprived of daily bread. Is there any way to help such people? So we're starting to do this. There's another sort of a group that I'm part of, which is actually advocating organizations, NGOs, and the government to ensure that we could have some sort of a minimum wage given out to the daily wage earners. And I know it's going to be hard for a country like India to do that, but I think we will have to do it. In fact, one way we can all do is if at our neighborhood level or if our apartment complex can come together. If you guys live in apartments and if you have X number of families can coming together and kind of putting a pool together so that at least the people who around your ecosystem are daily wage earners can actually be donated money with. The other way to think about it is actually working with organizations and ensuring that they can do something about the daily wage earners. It's going to be extremely hard because everything is at a halt right now. Anyone else has any suggestions, please feel free to put it. We will want to compile all of this and put it here. Saraswati Gurunathan says that we can make some behavioral changes that can have a positive impact in the long run, which is, yeah, skip a meal and grow some vegetables and herbs. Absolutely, grow vegetables and herbs. We have some workshops online on Carnival, which you can actually just go through and figure out how to make snacks which are healthy, how to grow veggies. So I think, yeah, I think there's a lot there we can do. I think the key part is to come to terms with the idea that we're in this for the long run, right? And to have your bare minimum sort of planning, financial planning, both personally and from a business perspective in place. Keeping expectations really, really low in terms of how the business will go. I think once you've done that, we should be able to come through this. Maya asks, how do you encourage people to support small businesses at a time when everyone is worried about an economic slowdown? Look, I think the economic slowdown is there, and we're all going to go through it, right? Whether it's a large business or a small business. The only point is that if we are spending money, and if we come from a matter of privilege, then could we spend that money on a small business? Because it's actually a lot more important, because the cushioning layer for a small business is very, very thin. For a large business, it's a lot easier. Saraswati also says it's a good time to see businesses use technology to promote sustainability and not depend on economic progress brought about by unchecked consumerism. That's an interesting one. I agree with that. Would like to see wealth creation that can be spread more broadly as opposed to being concentrated, so that such incidents as a virus attack doesn't bring the entire world economy to a grinding halt. Yeah, I think this is a very good macroeconomic topic, Saraswati. Absolutely. I think the unchecked consumerism will definitely get checked in this phase. What will be interesting to see is what are the structures and economic models that come out of this phase when we get onto the other side, especially with the way the markets are crashing and businesses are being destroyed, right? So yeah, it would be lovely to see that sort of a wealth creation be more wide than deep. Krishnan says, even see if customers in Carnival could pay in advance to small manufacturers listed in the portal, and advance payment for the products they want to buy over the next few months. More risk for you to think of now, but will certainly help the cash flows of the small business. I think so. I think that's very interesting, Krishnan. Thank you. Ankita, hi. This phase might bring us to rethink leading minimalistic lives. Yeah. So Ankita's message is to Saraswati, saying that maybe this phase will help us to rethink how we live minimalistically going forward. Krishnan, on that end, if advance payments and stuff is an interesting thing, I think we do have a network of people who can lend money at reasonable terms to small businesses, especially in these moments of crisis. If not customers paying in advance, we're happy to connect you through our network. Yep. Great. Anything else? Kaushal says, how do we take call on capex in such times? Kaushal, I think there's a lot of capex which would be already invested in. I think you should definitely think of it. Again, is a function of your thing. But for instance, assume that let's say you have enough runway. You had enough runway to last a year, for instance, as of last month. And I would say, figure out all possible ways to slow down so that you extend that runway from that 1 year to make it at least 2 years, right? So if you're taking a call on marketing, if marketing is really cheap for you, maybe you should do it if it's just online. But if it's going to be expensive, it's spending a lot of money, then probably you should rethink on that. Even tech, I think tech is a great enabler and brings in more efficiency in a core sector like yours, which is into manufacturing. Tech is of course on the fringe. It's a great optimization tool. But if it's coming at a huge cost, then probably not, right? Because you're not going to be at a very large scale right now. So optimization can kind of come in a little later. Anjani says, that's a very interesting point. Are there shared resources among related businesses? I think that's a very, very interesting point. And yeah, I think, businesses coming together and sharing some of the resources that can be commonly used. I know finance can be like commonly used across a lot of businesses, and that's one way to bring down costs. That's a very, very innovative way to do it. And probably people in the same sector can club together. So for instance, if you are in the manufacturing sector in packaging, you could identify a few more packaging businesses, come together and see what are your shared resources which can actually bring down your costs significantly. That's a very, very good point. Yeah. So yeah, Kaushal is definitely looking at that from a finance and HR integration. Great. Yeah, I have 5 more minutes. If people want to kind of really discuss anything more, also feel free to let us know if this was useful. Um, for me, the idea was to do this because we've been grappling with a lot of thoughts and questions, and we thought it would just always be good to put it out there, talk about it, and see what others are kind of thinking about it, what the challenges, and always just it's always good to just talk about these things. We may not get all the answers, but at least we know that there are like-minded people out there facing similar issues, and that was the whole idea of doing this conversation. So, Kaushal, any at-home workout recommendations? Just get the Nike Training Club. Get this app called the NTC. It's called the Nike Training Club. Just enter your details. It even asks you how often you want to work out and all of that, and it'll generate a workout for you at home without any equipment. I love it. It's called NTC again. I'm just saying it's Nike Training Club. It's very, very good. Playlist, Kaushal, yeah, I'm happy to share my Spotify playlist post this. Bhavesh says, indeed, it's a great start. Do put these points and such collaborations of demand supply on your platform. Everyone would benefit for sure. Sure, Bhavesh, we do plan to at least share this recording and some of these conversations that have come out to this. Sarah asked, when do you plan to do this again? Happy to do this again, as in when people want this. We can do this once in 2 weeks if it's helpful, of course. I don't want this to be more like a sermon, which this is not. We're trying to really whip up a discussion. I'd also love to see if we can have everyone else talk about this also. But anything else, any other topics that you guys would want to, talk about, you would want me to discuss about, I'm happy to do that. That's my email address. Feel free to send in anything, any thoughts, whether you like this, didn't like it, and so on. Thanks, Kaushal. Kaushal says this is wonderful and refreshing. And as we go forward, we'll have more clarity too, hopefully. So more ideas. Absolutely. Good informative session. I think many deliberations can start. Yes, that is the idea. The idea was this, to just have people come and just talk about challenges and stuff that we're facing. And I'm hoping this is a start. And if you think there are any other topics that you would want us to talk about, please let us know. Just you could email us, or you could just type it in here. Yeah, Rajesh, thank you. Thanks for the session. He says, look forward to much more interaction in the future. Absolutely. Krishnan, thank you very much. And thanks for sharing. Thanks for sharing that insight. I'd love to see those bags go to the supermarkets, really. Great. Thank you, Ahira. Thank you very much. All right, guys. So we will stop at this. But like I said, you are free to send an email to that email address there, d.parekh@thebetterindia.com. Thank you, Meenakshi. Thanks, Nikhil. Kaushal, yes, we will. We'll probably send it out as email to all the people who attended this or who registered this. We can put it up, or I'm happy to put this up on YouTube as a video so that people can just kind of go through it. Thank you, Anthony. And yeah, thanks, Meenakshi, again. So Rajesh suggests this topic, saying we'd like to discuss the space social sector and on its impact. Happy to do that. I think there's a lot of stuff. So feel free, please, to send in your stuff to that email address. And thank you once again. So I'm going to end this conversation now. Thank you.